gives the Star a wide-ranging exclusive interview in which he explains his political challenges, and you can follow his story inside the Star on page 4, 5, and 6, and 7 today. Also, People Daily is up next, and this is what he's holding for us. Mystery of missing golden chains. Not me. Nobody appears to know where the chains worth millions of shillings belonging to defunct local authorities vanished to. And now, with the man who oversaw transition from municipal to county administration, Kinuthia Wamwangi, calling on DCI to investigate. We have the story on page 4 and 5 of the People Daily. Remember the chain they used to don? And we can see here John Derango wearing that. This is former Nairobi mayor. And you can see also previous mayors, that is Isaac Madenge, former Nyanyuki mayor, and also Mohamed Surwa, former Nakuru mayor, and Job Matthias Sichele, former Kakamega mayor as well. So this particular gold chains are missing, and this is what is on the front page of the People Daily this morning. We take a keen look also on what is on the front page of the Taifa Leo. Wayatima wa Tanga. That is what is on the front page of the Taifa Leo. Murkomen Ishungwa na Waria kati ya wahasiriwa wa hatua ya Ruto kujitenga na makundi ya siasa za 2022. You can follow the story inside Taifa Leo as well, and you can see their faces are spread here on the front page of Taifa Leo. Business Daily. Canal CEO deleted text before insider trading raid. This is a new revelation there. Remember, the Capital Markets Authority raided their offices and took their laptops there. And so this is what is coming out. Capital Markets Regulator says in court filings, its investigators retrieved SMSs, emails, and WhatsApp messages that were erased from electronic gadgets. This story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Kenokobe CEO David Ohana deleted selected text messages and call logs just hours before detectives raided his office. The stock market regulator has told the court in the ongoing investigations into suspected insider trading of the oil firm's shares. Capital Markets Authority investigators have in affidavits said they believe that Mr. Ohana and Mr. Andre Desimon, the chief executive of stock brokerage firm Kestrel Capital, got a tip-off on the impending raid, leading them to clean their devices ahead of the raid and seizure of documents. You can follow the story, as I've said, on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, Moi Ira head of public services loses 300-acre land in Trans Nzoia. And fighting cancer. Remember, today is World Cancer Day. Participants march from Shanderia Cancer Center at the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital yesterday during the launch of events marking this year's World Cancer Day, which will be commemorated today. Among the activities planned for the week are free screening and raising awareness about the disease. See also special report on page 12 and 13 of today's Business Daily. World Cancer Day. There is free screening. This is Monday through Friday, and this will be happening at Chandaria Cancer Center today from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you have an opportunity to actually head there, this will be a good opportunity for you also, or a good time for you to go and get screened. Also, shilling hits 6 months or 6-month high to dollar. The shilling has strengthened to a 6-month high, supported by strong dollar inflows from buyers of treasury bonds and remittances by Kenyans in the diaspora. The Kenyan currency closed at a high of 100.39 units to the dollar in Friday's foreign exchange market trading. Reuters live trade data showed the shilling strengthening for the better part of Friday, touching 100.31 at 3 p.m. before weakening slightly to 100.39 units as the day drew to a close. You can follow the story also on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Because of borders right now, we head to Tanzania, where we have a citizen awaiting us. Cashews verification lags as deadline looms. Thousands of tons of cashew nuts worth billions of shillings have not yet been verified. This is 2 days before the government's deadline for the full settlement of outstanding payments. This story continues on page 2 of The Citizen this morning. Also, government to renegotiate natural gas contracts is another sub-headline there that you can follow inside the Citizen this morning. TV envoy in Germany responds to Lisu claims is a full story. You can follow this on page 3 of the Citizen. Also, Catholic Church condemns Njombe killings. This story continues on page 2. We can get the Swahili edition of the Citizen. This is Mwananchi. Siri mpya wapinzani kuhamia CCM yatajwa. Siri mpya wapinzani kuhamia CCM yatajwa. And the story continues on page 2 of Mwananchi. This is how it looks today. You can grab a copy for yourself. Also, mauaji ya watoto Njombe ilivyobadili utaratibu wa maisha ya watu. You can follow this story also. This is mkazi wa kijiji cha Ingwachanya wilayani Wangingombe mkoani Njombe. This is given Nyachi ambaye ni dereva wa bodaboda akiwa amelazwa katika hospitali ya Mtakatifu Joseph Ikelu baada ya kujeruhiwa Ijumaa jioni na wananchi wa kijiji. You know, that lynching that was happening because of the killings. You can follow the story inside Mwananchi. Let's see what we have in Uganda, and we can try and also just pick up the... try and see if I can actually get that quickly. That is Daily Monitor in Uganda. Uganda retains UN base and 500 jobs. This is what we have on that particular. Let me try and see if this is actually the correct one. Just give me a moment and see if we have it for you. That's not it. I beg your pardon. Schools ignore safety rules as they reopen. This is correct one. Following the Rakai school fire about 2 months ago, school authorities were directed to erect perimeter walls, remove burglar-proof windows, install fire extinguishers and CCTV cameras, among others. However, our survey, that is the Daily Monitor survey, found out that many schools have not done this as the term opens. And this story continues on page 32 and 33 of Daily Monitor in Uganda. Peacekeeping, UN weapons stuck at Uganda border. And you can see here, and the caption reads, flatbed trucks loaded with UN vehicles and tanks at Uganda's Vura border point near the Democratic Republic of Congo. A cache of weapons and other cargo belonging to the UN have been held up at the border for more than a month due to unpaid transport and customs fees. This story continues on page 6 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. In Rwanda, we have the new times for you. Why government introduced monthly allowance for expectant mothers. You can find all the details there. Rwanda on the rising. And this, of course, is a good initiative from the government. Why government introduced monthly allowance for expectant mothers. Find out why, right? And you can follow that story also on page 5 of the New Times. Rwandans in diaspora mark Heroes Day. This is on page 5 of the New Times. And private sector can do more to seize opportunities. And also Cancer Day, call for regular screening for women. This is also happening in Rwanda. And we can see hundreds of residents of Kigali city turned up for the bi-monthly car-free day, where they were tested not only for different cancers but also other non-communicable diseases. The Ministry of Health has urged women aged 30 years and above to have regular screenings for cervical and breast cancer. Government has recently included such checkups on the package received by Rwandans under Mutuelle de Santé Insurance. You can follow this story on page 2 of the New Times in Rwanda. This week, the East African is holding this splash still together, or still together, just right. 20th Ordinary EAC Heads of State Summit. Extraordinary, actually. Friday was a day of reckoning for a bloc driven by suspicions, trade spats, and a stalled integration agenda. And you can see them here on the front page of the East African this week. This is President Paul Kagame, President John Magufuli, Yoweri Museveni, and Uhuru Kenyatta. Also, we can see left is Burundi Vice President. This is Gaston Sindemwo. And you can follow the story about the EAC on the page 4, where you have the full report. Also, Kenyan farm buys Dar cashew for $180 million. Tanzania will earn $180.2 million from its stock of cashew nuts after it entered into an agreement with a little-known Kenyan registered farm Indo-Power Solutions Limited for the purchase of 100,000 tons of the product last week. The deal was signed on January 30th between the National Board of Grains and Crops Directors, that is Hussein Mansour, and Indo-Power Chief Executive Brian Mutembei. Also at the signing at the East African Community headquarters in Arusha were Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, that is Palamagambana Kabudi, Industry and Trade Minister Joseph Kakunda, and Bank of Tanzania Governor Florence Luoga. You can follow the story on page 13 of the East African this week. Also on the front page of the East African, you can grab a copy of that is a magazine that, of course, it comes handy every Monday or Saturday for you inside the East African. The new Kigali sound shakes wonder. You can read all about that also inside the East African. I want to show you also the magazine that you can grab a copy from the newsstands. This is the latest of the Nairobi Law Monthly, a constitutional call to arms. A constitutional call to arms. Dr. William Mutunga, Professor Yash Gai, and Professor Ben Shihanya. You can read all about the articles also inside the Nairobi Law Monthly. Corruption at KPC. Uhuru was duped into launching bogus Kisumu jetty. This story continues on page 26 of the Nairobi Law Monthly. And consumer confidence down on uncertain future. This story continues on page 51 of the Nairobi Law Monthly. Also, Newsweek. This is the latest. And you make sure you grab a copy of this as well. Who lost Europe? How Germany's Merkel divided the EU by trying to save it. You can grab a copy of this as well. And we could take a keener look also on the editorial cartoons as well. Let's begin with what is in the Star. Victor is back. East African community, right? East African community. That is how it looks. East Africa community. Gentlemen, let's try and all just get along. Gentlemen, let's try and all just get along. That is according now to Victor. Okay, let's see what we do have inside the Daily Nation. And this is according to IGA, public health, that is public health sector. I leave it for you to decipher this. Maybe it's in light of what is happening today. Remember, the nurses are going on strike and 11 counties will be affected. This is what is on also the editorial page of the Daily Nation according to IGA. And we have also the Standard, which Ghetto has drawn this for us today. The EACC, right? You can see the puppy on the lap there, which is the EACC, and graft. I'll leave it for you to decipher this as well, according to Ghetto. And lastly, we can also try and see what Stano has drawn for us. This is inside the People Daily. I'll try and lift it again for you to see this. There we go. Strike. The nurses are, of course, threatening to strike. And as I've mentioned, we have 11 counties that will be affected today. And we'll be following this story for you as well. So, no talks, the strike is on. So make sure you grab a copy of the dailies for these riveting stories. Already we have our panelists in studio with us. We shall be discussing a raft of issues as far as politics is concerned and what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation. And remember, today is World Cancer Day. If you have an opportunity to go to various places that will be screening, you can get that done for you very quickly. Don't lose out on that opportunity for you to get screened and know your status as well as far as cancer is concerned. For now, let's put this horse into full run by looking at the highlights. The nurses' strike starts today. 11 counties will be affected. Pope arrives in UAE for historic Gulf visit. And Nissan's scrapped plan a significant blow, says Britain's business minister. Now, it pretends to be a difficult experience for patients in public hospitals in 11 counties from today. The Nurses Union has rejected the government's efforts to negotiate a way out of the impending strike that is set to begin today. The Ministry of Labour, through a conciliation committee, extended an invite to the Nurses Union for a meeting today, but the KNUN says the meeting is too late to avert the strike. They are demanding that both the county and national governments fully implement the return to work formula signed in 2017. NTV's Brenda Wanga reports on the latest round of labor battles between the government and nurses.
1 year after the nurses ended one of the longest strikes in the country's recent history, the nurses are gearing to make good their promise to down their tools again starting Monday.
I have no powers to call off any strike.
1 year after the nurses ended one of the longest strikes in the country's recent history, the nurses are gearing to make good their promise to down their tools again starting Monday. The nurses' impending industrial action stemming from what they term as non-compliance with the return to work formula that was signed on the 2nd of November 2017, the same formula that ended their 5-month-long strike then. In that agreement, the Council of Governors and the national government had agreed to an increase in allowances paid to the nurses, one of the issues that had led to the 2017 strike. The nurses across the counties were awarded a uniform allowance of 15,000 shillings with an addition of 5,000 each financial year to make it a total of 25,000 shillings by 2021. In the same breath, the nurses were to get a nursing allowance of 23,000 shillings with a staggered increment each financial year to rest at 30,000 by 2021.
Money was factored in the budget, but somebody's running rings around to ensure that that money goes to other projects.
The nurses now say they are yet to receive these allowances and their 1-year wait has now come to an end. Starting Monday, the 4th of February, nurses from West Pokot, Kisumu, Nairobi, Kisii, Taita Taveta, Nyandarua, Trans Nzoia, Elgeyo Marakwet, Wajir, Nyeri and Kitui counties will not report to work. The second batch of counties to join the strike will be Kiambu, Homa Bay and Marsabit. These counties will go on strike on the 6th of this month. On the 11th, Kwale, Garissa, Samburu, Kirinyaga and Embu will join their colleagues. If their grievances will not have been addressed by the 18th of this month, Murang'a, Busia, Nakuru and Siaya counties will join the strike, bringing to 24 the number of counties affected. A conciliation committee appointed by the Ministry of Labour to address the nurses' issue has scheduled a meeting with the nurses' representatives tomorrow, but the nurses say they will not heed to that invitation. The nurses' union insists that nothing short of the full implementation of the 2017 return to work formula will see them stay at work. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
So the script is very predictable. Come January, of course, we know the nurses or maybe the teachers or doctors will threaten to go to strike. So will this particular strike that begins today make any discernible difference as far as the beginning agreement is concerned? We have our guest already in studio with us. We have Dr. Agnes Zani, who is the nominated senator, also Deputy Secretary General of ODM, and we do have with us Dr. Shemo Chodho, who is a chairperson of Kenya Global Alliance, and we're eagerly awaiting also for other panelists to join us, that is Dan Marzo and also Alice Wahome, much later in the course of the program. But let's just continue with you, Dr. Zani, on this. So this is not new to us. Every year, when we begin in January, we have to get some notices either from the doctors, nurses, or the teachers.
Yeah, I think this week we're looking at the health sector and looking at it from different perspectives. Let me start, Debarl, if I may, by just saying that we acknowledge today as the World Cancer Day.
Yes.
And to really wish those who have been infected or are suffering from cancer that they can get a quick recovery, and really that they can be able to manage the cancer, because that is something that actually takes a big population of people who can work for the country, then they're not able to do so. And also quickly just to say on the issues of medicine for cancer, again, very, very critical, radioactive iodine-131 missing in the hospitals. I think there has to be, again, a comprehensive approach about how to address cancer as a whole. I'm talking about cancer because it's, again, within the health sector, and that's what we're talking about. But the strike is related with collective bargaining agreements. And we've seen this happen before with the lecturers, with the teachers, and now with the nurses, that the nurses now are expecting their monies to be paid. They're saying they're getting about half what they expect to get and they want. So it's unfortunate that again, we're coming again into a situation where there's going to be confrontation and that an issue probably is almost now emanating into a strike. A committee was formed by COG to try to arbitrate, to ensure that they can actually avert the strike, but for these 11 counties, that has not happened. So again, it brings again onto the fore the critical aspects of worker and labor relations. Labor relations are under the 4th schedule within the national government, but again, it's very, very critical to know that anytime when there's a CBA is a negotiated agreement. It's a negotiated document which has very clear stipulations. And from the clip that you've played, Debarl, there's an assertion that probably this money has actually been released, but it hasn't yet been availed. This is the perception, or this is the reality that the nurses are putting on the ground. And probably they're looking at the expectations they've had, the planning that they have done. They knew this money is going to be availed at a certain time. They know that when this money is availed, they're going to use it for various things that they need to use it for, and then suddenly it is not available. It's unfortunate that we are moving again now into a confrontational situation on this matter.
Right. And of course, we know previously they were saying also around 13 counties they had not really honored their collective bargaining agreement as well. So it seems we're always carrying over the same problem. Year in, year out, take it to next year. We don't know for how long. Dr. Shemochodo.
Debarl, allow me also to wish Kenyans and friends of Kenya, wherever they are, a happy World Cancer Day. It's stressful, Debarl, that you wake up to a Monday morning and so early in the year, and we do know that universal health coverage is one of the big 4 agenda. Rather than making progress, you start wondering, are we really regressing or we are moving forward? It's very unfortunate, really. Of course, those in charge of managing the health sector in the country cannot escape blame. But again, maybe this is not the time for blame games. It's very unfortunate that there was a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement that was negotiated, agreed, and then assented to by the parties. You start wondering, really, what is it that's not right? Is it that we didn't project properly? And if so, are there any mitigating measures that can be taken to resolve the matter? It's very unfortunate, but I must also make a passionate appeal to the professionals that rather than grandstanding, I think it's normally good bargaining tool when you get the public on your side. And to get the public on your side, in my view, would mean a little bit of humility and tolerance. Sometimes you have to tolerate a little more than you would consume or take generally. So I want to make that appeal to the professionals that, yes, they obviously have been wronged, but still, even as the Bible says, let's come sit down together and reason. I would want to encourage them to give dialogue a chance. I know it's not very easy once you've given a notice of a strike, and then it's like people just play games, buying time until it's too late to dialogue. So yes, really, the blame for me wouldn't be on one particular side. I think it cuts across, but rather than belabor about who is right, who is wrong, can we as a country say, look, can we come together and have a conversation, particularly the sectors and the key institutions that are involved, both from the public sector, both at national and county levels, including the labor ministry, as well as the professionals, so that we say, look, what can we realistically do at this particular point? But also, I mean, to give it to the nurses, when we see other arms of government increasing salaries, what they call allowances and so on and so forth, and we're not doing the same for people who are in this critical sector that health is, not to mention education, I think that's really not right. But again, I want to make appeal, even knowing that it's not right, but can we come around the table and find a solution to minimize the suffering? I saw one of the cartoons where there is this big rock boulder that's being rolled down, and there is a patient on life support system. surely as a professional, and I thought the health sector would be more sensitive to people's or their clients' needs, that they would say, okay, in as much as we are wrong, please let's give dialogue a chance.
And maybe even looking at this particular strike, the boulder here, that the nurse is trying to, push it down.
Sure.
Could we say this is Sisyphus? Did they call it the Greek god Sisyphus that was actually trying to roll the rock up always, and it's always falling back and rolling back? Is this the sort of struggle that we have with the nurses as well, and this collective bargaining agreement? They're trying to push this particular boulder up. That is a negotiation, but it's always rolling back. As far, if you may remember the Sisyphus, the Greek god, right? Yeah. Dr. Zani, comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's easier when you're pushing it down than pushing it up. Pushing up is more problematic, more difficult. It's always easier when it's going down, but what that cartoon is also showing is that when it comes down, the catastrophic effect is really, and I think the worst part about that cartoon is you can see the patient, they're actually seeing it coming. So it's that in itself can even worsen somebody's health condition. You're seeing that I have a problem, I might not be able to actually get the solution for it, I might not be able to get the medicine that I need, for example, and that creates a lot of anxiety. But again, also, Debarl, this country has been used to far too many strikes. We actually, in between the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, and its implementation, in between its formulation and the contract and then the actual implementation, there's quite a lot of time that is given. Some of these CBAs are up to almost 2 years given implementation period. Some give maybe up to 6 months, and maybe even the strike notices come pretty early. I think what creates a lot of puzzle is why the various stakeholders, because most of the time one group is making a certain assertion. For example, in this case, an assertion is made that the money is actually there. So if you had, for example, Treasury there, the ministry there, the county governments there, and the Kenya National Union of Nurses there, all discussing and saying, yes, this money has been released. It was released on such and such a day. Where is this money? Where is it going to? I feel like sometimes most of the issues can actually be sorted out long before the actual strike. And I think from the workers' point of view, when they reach a point where they have tried over and over again, and it seems like the necessary players are not addressing the issue, that's what pushes them to this. So this is not an ideal situation where you're actually pushing the boulder down, but you can imagine also from the nurses' perspective, if they've actually held back their horses, and I think it's unfortunately now becoming a pattern, which is also problematic for a country, because when people now feel that it is only through a strike that we can actually attain a particular goal, then that becomes problematic. So they actually try to forestall this by having this committee come into place, this committee that was formed from members of the COG and some of the members from the ministry and some of the members from the county governments, but it seems not to have worked. And I think it would be just critical to get the nitty-gritty of what went on. Why was this committee, was it, for example, able to put all the players on the table? And I think in the past, sometimes you find the players coming to the table, but they don't come with their cards open and putting them on the table. So you find through the bargaining process, a lot of time is taken, but you don't really narrow down to the nitty-gritty of addressing the issues, because we don't have enough coming on the table enough to discuss what the issue is. So again, it's a sign of frustration.
Right, Dr. Shemachodo.
Yeah, just before we leave that cartoon, there is much more one can read about it, because one, you can see that it's due to gravity.
Yes.
The rock is going to go down regardless.
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, if it goes down, you see even the person pushing it is in a very precarious position. It may just crash with everyone, including the nurses themselves. Thirdly, the person, the patient, is asking for help. And it's that same person that's the danger to the person. I think the boulder is a bigger danger, perhaps, because the effect of that could be far devastating than even the ailment. So the person you're asking for help is like a child pleading for help, and little knowing that the person you're requesting help from, say like the terrorists, they're really coming up for you. So I think there is much more on that. But again,
can we also you try and say that, of course, the patient that we can see here on the bed, and of course he's on drips. This is
life support.
Life support, yes.
Sure.
But it really symbolizes that that which is happening to our
Yes,
to our
health
healthcare system in the country.
Correct.
Is there money as far as funding healthcare is concerned? We could be grappling with yes, this collective bargaining agreement, but we can see the government is also trying to shift poles. I just want to compare this particular. Had you finished? Then yes.
Yeah, basically I was saying I think it's vital that a conversation takes place. Of course, if there is no money for health sector, you wonder where's the money gone. And I wanted also to call upon, I do know that there are peacemakers. The multi-sectoral forum in the past have come around, the religious leaders, to say, look, can we come and sit around the table and have a genuine conversation?
Let me introduce to us also Dan Mazo, who's a member of parliament from Makueni. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We're just discussing about this looming strike today of the nurses, and of course, as we always say, we are always waiting for the other shoe to drop every year. It's never different, any different come January, as far as strikes are concerned.
Well, you know, since the time of the new constitution and when health was devolved, a lot was also left with the national government, and it has not been reconciled between the responsibilities in the county government and the responsibilities in the national government. A part of the nurses are still working for the national government, like, you know, the ones in Rifaro Hospital in Kenyatta, while, you know, in the city, in the county of Nairobi, we have others who are employed by the Nairobi County and many other counties like this. You can see this time around, it's not every county is in trouble, but some counties are. So I believe we must find a solution into this problem once and for all.
All right. Thank you very much. But I just want to compare with this headline that is a bit so refreshing in Rwanda compared to what is happening with Kenya. Why government introduced monthly allowance for expectant mothers. Right? And it goes to say that lives of vulnerable pregnant and breastfeeding mothers are set to improve thanks to monthly stipend that are set to address varied issues of health, nutrition, and extreme poverty in families. And this story continues it continues on page 5. The initiative, which was announced in January, will come into effect this month. And according to officials, by mid-February, the first disbursement will have been made. The scheme specifically seeks to help families overcome malnutrition and stunting among children. Well, just I think last week or the week before, we saw also the stipend for the elderly has not been disbursed since September last year, and they're crying foul. And it begs the question that is the government broke? So even if we have this collective bargaining agreement, is there money in the first place? This also, the counties have been crying foul that yes, the monies have not been also disbursed to the counties for the longest time. I think latest by December they had not done that, and people are crying foul. The suppliers are not being things actually ground to a halt as far as operation is concerned. So should we just face it and say, or ask that particular pertinent question: is the government broke?
I think we need to tie that question to also what happened over the weekend and the reports that are coming in from the county governments, that also revenue collection. I think that when I looked at the list of counties, the ones who have reached at least up to about over 40% are probably maybe just about 20%. You're looking at revenue collection within the counties at 7%, and, you know, because again, if you're thinking about national government collection, where does this money come from? It comes again from the same counties and the systems again in those counties. And what is interesting is when you're looking, you know, and delving into the evolution, when you're looking at the differences, for example, in terms of the amount that was selected when it was local authorities and the amount that is being collected now in county governments, there's a great disparity. Some sort of conversation has to clearly take place. One, about how money is put into the kitty. And I remember mentioning this, I think, especially in the 11th Parliament, that counties have to be very innovative about how they're actually going to produce the wealth, even within their counties. So that, again, less reliance on national government in terms of the kitty, because most of these counties are very rich in natural resources, for example. They can exploit and actually make money from within the counties to begin to, again, loop into some of the services. Again, as Mheshimiwa Manzo has said, the whole separation of the functions for the national government and for the county governments, as far as health is concerned, has been problematic over time, and trying to decipher, because if you look at the responsibilities that are put for the counties, for example, as far as the issue of health is concerned, issues like veterinary services, issues like county health services and pharmacy, ambulance services, all these must be run at the county level, which means, again, the revenue, a bit of it could be coming from national, but a lot of it could be expected from the counties. So you find a lot of responsibility that's been put into county governments. At the same time, labor standards are at the national level. So again, national level intersection with counties as far as that is concerned. So again, it comes back to the same question. We can't answer it, Debarl, I think. The Treasury is the group, I think, to answer. You've asked a question to Paradise. Is the country broke? The perception is it seems to be from the way things are going. But again, also, you go back and ask yourself, how come the other times when there's been a collective bargaining agreement that has been the contract has not been adhered to, and then later on the money is actually paid up? It's as though sometimes we create a pattern where now the more more aggression or the more you fight for it, then it happens. Also creates a culture among Kenyans feeling that for it to happen, they must actually down the tools, they must actually put their foot down, and then the money will come. Because if the money then finally does come, does it mean that that package has been removed from one ministry into another just to stop the gap, you know, at that particular time? Does it mean that that particular allocation that should have been there is actually not there? The nurses are averting that that allocation is there, but it hasn't just been paid to them. So they also then feel it is time to push for it to be paid to them.
But how could we also be talking about universal health care?
Yes.
We're talking about a big four agenda.
Yes.
It does not really hang together when we're talking about universal health care, and here also we're talking about, you know, and the nurses strike, for that matter, affecting the very sector that we want really universal health care to, you know, to be afforded. And right now we know we only have, I think, 4 counties as a pilot programs for the universal health care. We're eagerly waiting only 3 years down the line that we are supposed to now put out, or maybe actually put out these programs to all the other maybe 44 counties that are remaining. But the question will be, again, as I've mentioned, how does it hang together?
Correct.
UHC and the nurses strike, or the doctors strike that maybe might come after this.
Debarl, it ties even with the case of Rwanda that you're sharing with us. You clearly can see this is a country on the move. And for Rwanda, it's not just in the health sector. Actually, much more would be said in terms of gender equity, in terms of technology, in terms of environment, in terms of security, and so on. So it's certainly a country on the move, and it's all leadership. But there are 2 things that I didn't want us to lose. One is, it's being said that money has been allocated. Has it been released or not? If it has been released, where is it? Somebody really needs, you know, money also doesn't grow legs per se on its own. It must be somewhere if it's been released. So somebody owes us an answer. But a second point, that's a caution I would also want to give to the union, the nurses union, together with that boulder rock falling down with it. You know, government could be giving them a bait. If you go on strike, maybe for 3 months or 6 months, then we don't have to worry about paying you for those 3 months. We would be saving money. I think we must be very careful.
But at the expense of lives?
At the expense of life, you know. But, you know, sometimes you wonder, does our leadership really care about the ordinary Kenyan? I think this is the question we must ask. But also it goes down to me in terms of prioritization. And I hold it against the Build Bridges initiative. Rather than this referendum thing being pushed on the throats of Kenyans, really where should our priority be? It should be this economy first. I don't know whether it was President Bush or Reagan who said it's economy stupid. You know, everything runs on the economy. That's really where we should be having a serious conversation. And it's not that Kenya is short on resources. We shouldn't be struggling. We shouldn't be broke. There is so much that Kenya has that's not tapped. So I think if we focused on getting the economy right, many other things would fall into place. For me, that's where the conversation, the priority number 1, economic reforms that we need to fix the country, really should be the priority we should be talking about.
All right, let's hear from Dan Mazo.
Yes, sir. You know, the patient really suffers in this country, and universal health care is one of the things we thought is going to be a solution. There are very many families whenever we have health issues, be it cancer, be it road accident, they are unable to pay their bills. So every day there is one or two Harambes, you know, this family or the other try to settle millions of shillings of health bills. So I think it's a serious crisis which we really need to think of, and universal health care could be a solution, but I think the implementation is too low and the success has not been, you know, checked up through. So it's a responsibility, you know, of the Ministry of Health to make sure that, you know, a Kenyan is taken care of. I know the dream of the president is to make sure that every home or wherever a patient has been in hospital, the bills are able to be settled. So while we are talking about hospital bills, we also got an issue we've got an issue with pay nurses and pay doctors and generally mobilizing the health sector. Therefore, it is important we check what is happening in other jurisdictions. We have the best practices, and I believe if we do that, we'll be able to get the matter of the people working or employed by the health sector, and also the fate of the patient. When the patient has bills, you are unwell, and your family cannot afford. It's really a big issue. Debarl.
Dr. Zani, you want to say something?
Debarl, thank you. I just want to say that the issue of health really from a developmental perspective is so critical, because these same people that really need to have their health in order, even to become economic transformers within the society. If they don't have that ability, then again, it's a big problem. And universal health care, yes, to be lauded, not the first country to implement it, but again, it comes back to the same thing, the issue of money, because it really gives quite a lot of hope in terms of both outpatient and inpatient services that it's able to give, catering for maternal and child care, catering for medical and surgical services, for example, in outpatient consultation and dealing with mental illnesses and all that. Right now, it's a pilot in Kisumu, Nyeri, Isiolo, and Machakos counties.
Yes.
We haven't yet got the progress report about how that rollout is going, but I think, again, like most developmental issues and projects in Kenya, you know, it becomes tricky, because then you can't even hold people accountable. You can't hold the people who supply the labor accountable, because even when they are able to deviate from what they're meant to do, they will go to this big hypothesis of what the problem is, and it always becomes financial. So where the money is available, yes, the services can run. Some of the money might be available, but again, also the labor, the training for that labor, because it's not just about putting in the income bit, the money part. It's also about how can that money be translated for it to come out with the proper output. So training, labor, interest, taking care of those who are actually performing this particular task becomes very, very critical. So when that match is not there, it creates a situation. I think in this case, these pilot counties will be very, very critical in really coming up with a very short-term report to say how it has rolled out, and that should be something that also the other counties need to be able to roll out as well.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, we want to just continue also with a story that is very dear to us as well. And Mildred Odira, she fell sick on Monday night. That was last week. And in the wee hours of Tuesday, she took a taxi to a hospital in Kasarani. Unfortunately, she has not been seen since. The family of the Nation Media Group employees holding on to hope as the police continue with the search, which has so far seen the taxi driver being arrested. Sharon Baranga has more on this.
Family and friends continue to gather at Mildred Odira's house in Nairobi's Kariobangi South Estate. They come together in sorrow, fear and hope. Hope that their missing kin who went missing 6 days ago will be found safe. Many of them last saw her on Sunday during a birthday party. On Monday, Mildred was feeling unwell and went to hospital.
On Monday, I called her again to confirm if she went to the hospital. Then she told me she went. That was SOS.
Despite having gone back home, she did not feel better. And in the early hours of Tuesday, she got worse. The security guard at her estate called a taxi belonging to a man who did not live too far from her place to take her to hospital. He was to rush her to Ruaraka Neema Hospital, which he says he did. However, details were not adding up.
They went. Now, when they went, they called me. Ma'am, we are here in hospital, and there's no record here that Mildred was brought here.
The driver allegedly drove into the compound and shortly after left, with details of his presence there not tallying.
Tukachukua barua kwa polisi, tukaenda naye hospital. Sasa kufungua hiyo CCTV, tukaona hiyo gari iliingia at 4:33. Ikustop. Iliingia, ikaenda down na ikatoka. Hakuna mtu alitoka kwa gari. Na ameinsist, alimwacha hospital. Sasa vile walienda nao, wakakuta hakuna mtu alidrop. Sasa amenyamaza, sasa aongi.
Police arrested the taxi driver and have been probing him. The family is appealing to anyone who has seen Mildred, an employee at Nation Media Group, to report to the nearest police station. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
We pray that Mildred will be found safe and sound. Our colleague here at Nation Media Group. Deputy President William Ruto has asked government officials in counties to move with speed and constitute their committees to check on government projects as ordered by the President. Speaking in Nyandarua County, DP Ruto said the government was keen on delivering its promises to Kenyans, and it was the duty of its officials to make sure these promises are delivered.
Vile Rais alitoa mwongozo Executive Order number 1 ya 2019. Ile miradi yote ya serikali kama soko hii, mambo ya maji, mambo ya hospitali, mambo ya barabara, sisi tunataka kuhakikisha ya kwamba tuko na up-to-date, accurate, real-time information on the implementation of all these projects. Kwa hivyo, Bwana County Commissioner, you now have the instructions kuwa na kamati hapa katika county ambayo itahakikisha ya kwamba tuko na information ya zile miradi zote ambazo zinaendelea, kama kuna yenye imekwama na ni kwa sababu gani, ndio tuhakikisha ya kwamba mpango wa serikali ya Jubilee inatimia. Therefore, all officers here in the county must work under that committee so that we can harmonize all government programs and ensure that we have a proper reporting system, a proper supervision mechanism to ensure that these projects are implemented and are successful.
And talking of solidarity, some political leaders from the Rift Valley have warned those keen on driving a wedge between President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, arguing that it is mission impossible. The leaders insist, I should say, the relationship between the president and his deputy has been strengthened.
Nimeona siasa malumbano na story mingi, pengine naibu rais sijui apendwi, sijui rais hajafanya nini, sijui mawaziri hawataki kufanya nini. I think my message to Kenya, and I want to assure, kama mtu mwenye nimetumwa hapa na rais na naibu wa rais, niwaambie kwamba the government is united and focused on delivering for the people of Kenya, and it is one indivisible, cohesive, hard-working government that is being led by only one president that wants to change this country.
Ningependa viongozi, tafadhali tuwache siasa kwa sasa. Tuwache siasa. Tufanye yale inayotuchenga kama viongozi na wananchi.
The president and deputy president are like conjoined twins according to the constitution of this land.
South Africa's radical leftist economic freedom fighters promised jobs creation and the expropriation of land without compensation. Welcome back. You're watching This Is The Point here on AM Live. And of course, we continue with our discussion with our panelists here this morning. And allow me to introduce to you, of course, as well, Alice Wahome. She is a member of parliament from Kandara. And she's been missing. You were playing football yesterday or what? Yeah?
Yes, I was doing soccer.
I hope you're not really nursing an injury.
Okay? I'm okay. I'm okay. We were launching the sub-county or the constituency soccer with the 78 groups, teams, youth groups from both men and women registering for the league, which got to 3-4 months to the final. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot of energy and enthusiasm.
Fantastic.
They've been waiting for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. We just want to go also to some of the headlines that we had over the weekend, especially on Sunday. And it had a very interesting headline there. Why Uhuru is an angry man. Cabinet stalled projects, graft fight, and 2022 politics pile pressure. This is the agenda. Also impatient. Insiders say President is frustrated as he races against time to secure his legacy in an environment complicated by competing selfish interests and toxic succession politics. And this story continues on page 19 of the Daily Nation. Do you think Uhuru is, of course, something is really exercising Uhuru as far as his legacy is concerned, that he's looking at his legacy and is looking at the current situation, and this is frustrating President Uhuru Kenyatta? Let's begin with you, Dr. Zani.
I think so. From the way things are looking, I mean, clearly this 4 agenda is something that he would want, the president would want to have a legacy on, and definitely, you know, we are seeing more of engagement with the CSs, more of reminding them, can you remain focused on what you have to do? You have to give service to the people, and less politicking, less talk about 2022, and more action. So I think that's important. I think what we're seeing now is a renegotiation of the sort of rationale and the systems that have been put into place, especially for accounting and responsibility and reporting. That's what we seem to be seeing getting shaken up in terms of who actually then will make the reporting for the CSS. CS Matiang'i has been given that role to come up with a system of coordination, I think, which is needed therein. So I think, yes, clearly, I mean, time has a way to really move very fast, especially when you have quite a lot that you want to achieve. Time can move very, very fast, and definitely there is a feeling of urgency in all this. But I think the biggest sort of setback for us as Kenyans generally is that we have many plans. Making plans has never been, you know, something difficult for us to do. We make plans very well. But now when it comes to the implementation, I'm seeing efforts being made now at better processes for implementation, and that's important. But again, this is tied up, Debarl, with what we were discussing earlier, and that is the issue of graft. And on page 16, Gerald Okello touches on this very well. He says, don't turn war on graft into back pass employ. Because for as long as, again, it is back, I wasn't able to do this because the money for that was not there. We just started the story, Debarl, on the young lady who has disappeared, and sorry to Nation, you know, this is one of your employees. Again, the issue of security, everything finally comes to money. Because whatever systems you have into place really just need the money to go where it's meant to go to. And I think NGOs have sort of changed their style of doing things. You know, they will fund, but the money will go to those projects, for example, in kind. And maybe this is the sort of direction we need to be able maybe to start borrowing from. We need to find a system where if money has been allocated for something, that it must be able to get there, and some sort of accountability system. Now, Debarl, we have technologies much more than we had some time back, you know. So with technology, with information. And one of the things that we've been pushing for a long time is OGP, Open Government Systems, where you have transparency and accountability for everybody to see. It's a good thing. Many countries are still grappling with it. It's not yet 100% for any country, but then for countries that have been able to move on, this data is put out there. So for example, if somebody is looking at funding for health, They can actually go to the pages on the web and just say this is what was allocated and this is how fight. So that sort of openness and OGP of open governance systems and partnerships is something worldwide that is being practiced among different countries. I think that would help to a large extent, because once you have to put it open, then it becomes not just an issue of you and the supervisor. It becomes an issue of you, the participants, and the country at large. And to a large extent, it helps to create that sort of transparency. But clearly, yes, more talk about the CSS and more talk about them delivering on the promises that they ought to deliver on.
All right. And maybe just read some of what I think you do have the Sunday Nation. The president is feeling more of a lame duck than he thought he would be. This is according to David Lee. To build 500,000 houses within the 42 months left, we need to build 11,905 houses per month from today going forward. That is talking about now, of course, housing, which is also a pivotal part of the Big Four agenda. The president is acting with the realization that he must cultivate the positive legacy before he exits state power by 2022, according to Irungu Kangata. Impatient? Insiders say President is frustrated as he races against time to secure his legacy in an environment complicated by competing selfish interests and toxic succession politics. This story also continues on page 19 of yesterday's Sunday Nation, if you didn't grab a copy of the Sunday Nation. Let's hear from Dr. Shemo Chodo on this.
Debarl, for me, it's a question of getting the priorities right. The second priority on my list would be economic reforms. Before we talk of even building the 500,000 houses and so on and so forth, where is the money going to come from? Are we going to, are we managing even the little money that we have properly? Are we using it prudently? Why am I saying it's number 2 priority? Number 1 priority, and I don't know whether we're going to come back to the issue of Mildred, security for me would be number 1 thing to fix. Because if we can't fix it, it's like cross-cutting on the many issues that we're talking about. Allow me also to add my voice to wishing Mildred well and empathize with the employer and the family. But the issue of insecurity, not just in Nairobi but in the country, is an issue that should concern all of us and requires the priority that it deserves. And it's a broad issue. It even includes the issue of compensating the victims of the last elections. Nobody's talking about them. It's like, and the issue of even extrajudicial killing, people just disappearing. And these disappearances at some stage, it may be even the politicians at some stage may start disappearing. I think we need to fix that so that the issue of security, we say this is settled. The issue of economics, this is settled. Then can we deal with the other issues? It's part of why I was saying that I appreciate and I empathize also with the president when he says his ministers are letting him down and so on and so forth. But it's also the same reason why I'm saying I think we need to guide rather than focusing on issues that may be important but probably could be lower down on the priority list, like referendum and so on. In my view, the BBI needs to talk about the critical issues, and number 1 should be security, number 2 is economics. Why do I say that? There was a ruling this week that was very important that many may not have even taken notice of, Okia Umtata, on the issue of appointments, directors to boards. How do they get appointed? Is there merit? I think this is something that even the head of state should consider. The CSS we have, are these the best? When he tells them that, look, I have vijana that I can employ, it's not that we don't have Kenyans, men and women, inside and outside the country, who could run the country better. Can we, for one, say, can there be merit? Can we get the best? If we are saying we want to have a CS for X, Y, Z, you know, at the end of the day, Kenyans should look and say, yes, if we have that person there, that's the kind of person we know can deliver and has got the requisite requirements and so on and so forth. So for me, while I empathize with the Excellency of the President, maybe it's time to crack the whip. And I'm hoping that at some stage soon we're going to see government even better reorganized, and to the extent that you know, it doesn't have to be you or me, but can we see the face of Kenya, and can we? Is it a team that inspires confidence? So in terms of delivery, I think the CSS, of course, to be fair to the president, they need to deliver, they need to show results. But even the leadership, and when you're talking of economic reforms, one of the key issues, of course, is fighting graft. I think in yesterday's paper, Seko Owino of The Nation had also an equally interesting aspect to fighting graft. At the end of the day, and I keep repeating this on this bench, and I'm glad the NCCK said, look, let's come and talk. Let's consider even amnesty. Let's have a honest conversation. The only way that we're going to fight and stop corruption is by having honest conversation, not selective prosecutions. And then so that we convince people that we are serious about fighting graft.
Right, let's hear from Dan Mazo. You talked about BBI, and we have also Mandera Governor, this is Ali Roba, saying that, you know, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila should come forward and explain to Kenyans, clarify about the BBI. Roba says President Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA leader should tell Kenyans the particulars of the mystery. Yeah, in quotes. The governor he said he's expected governors, senators, and MPs to have by now understood the handshake more clearly. And maybe we should just pose this question to you: is this mystery, you know, unraveled for you? The handshake. Do you understand it clearly, Dan Mazo?
Yes. First, it was clear that the election was contested, and it was the country was going through a difficult moment. And automatically, if there was no handshake or peace as we enjoy, the country will be facing even a more difficult economic times, because we'll be losing out on security, we'll be losing out on tourism, trade, and many other, you know, areas. And it was clear that the president, having been declared elected and having been sworn in, it was a time to move on, and he humbled himself together with Raila Odinga. And now we have a handshake, and we have a peaceful cohesion of the state. But most important, what is happening to the nation economically? You know, there are stalled projects. Is the government functional? Are we as opposition checking the government? Or are we in a one-party system? Are we in a coalition? So there is a lot yet to be unraveled in this matter. And most important is to make sure that the government is functional. The judiciary does its work. We fight corruption, because it seems to be the biggest problem. The country has a lot of resources, but they are only going into a few people's pockets. We are unable to account for what we budget for. The budgetary cycles frustrates itself, in that projects are not completed, and you have to keep on going back to tender and retender, and you know, the country is almost at a standstill when it comes to its projects and the management of the resources. But I really want to say what Kenya is enjoying, we hope in the next 2 years or so, we see less of politics. And we want to see my understanding that time was that we have a team which is going around to make sure that there is cohesion in the country. We build bridges. And one of the things targeted is a referendum. The question is the country ready for referendum? Are we doing the referendum to create positions for leaders, or are we doing referendum to create structures of governance which will see this country excel in future and serve its people better? So there are a lot of questions and challenges, and I'm hoping that we will get clear answers as time moves by. Suppose there was no referendum in the country. Is the current constitution able to hold the country together after another election? Are we going to be having handshakes after every election? Or what exactly is the structure of governance which Kenyans can agree to, and that we may avoid this toxic politics? There's a lot of toxicity in politics in the country. You can see there are issues in Jubilee, although denied. There are issues in NASA. And there are issues everywhere. So we need to settle and make sure that we, first and foremost, we serve the country. And you cannot serve the country without a proper structure, without a firm structure, and without leaders coming together or respecting their respective positions after an election.
Right, let's hear from Malice. Listening to the tone and tenor of the president lately, especially when we were heading to Tanzania for the EAC summit, Would you tell that the president is an exercised, man as far as, corruption is concerned, delivery and efficiency of the CS is concerned? Is he happy?
Debarl, let me first say that I think the body language and the tone of His Excellency the President depicts a person who is at war with the implementation programs and processes. And I think that then is going to, unless it is checked or comes to an end, it's going to send frustrations to the rest of the country.
Yes.
Because you see, the presidency is an institution, and the person in charge of that, really the head, is His Excellency the President. And he needs to send confidence to the people, including the public officers that are serving under him. And I'm saying this very, very guarded, because I think that as a country we've just come from a very contested, so to speak, election with a lot of bad feeling, and so that I think he appeared from the beginning to have managed that very well in terms of building some bridges where people can be civil about each other, where people can have a conversation. Even if you disagree, you don't have to insult and abuse each other. I think that is a score for His Excellency the President and and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. But you see, when you move then further to the other people, including the entire NASA fraternity, they are lost, because it is very obvious, like the Right Honorable Raila Odinga does not stop at, he goes further to explain that this handshake is him and His Excellency the President. You see, then that, and you see, the idea was inclusion. That then starts excluding the people who fought in the NASA with him. And you can see that Kalonzo, although His Excellency the President has also tried to reach to the former vice president. But then you see Mudavadi is feeling left out, Wetangula is feeling left out. But, this is where then the confusion starts. And before even I go to that, you see the executive has ministers who sit with the president at the cabinet. What are they doing? Why is it that the president is coming out publicly to lash out at his ministers? I think some, to be honest, have started politics, and that can irritate the head of government, the head of state, and they must decide whether they will be in government, working for the government, or they will come and join us in politics. You have had alignment. Some want to be governors, some ministers are busy consolidating networks and building networks. I think those are the ones that the president should clear immediately, so that this irritation and frustration can end. There are ministers who we know won't even maybe to contest for other serious offices, and they haven't hidden about it. And there is nothing wrong to want to do that, but you cannot, because we are saying stop politics. If we politicians have been told to speak less, and you see, it's our business to speak, really, as politicians, and I don't think that will frustrate the president, because you cannot start gagging. You may guide, you may give advice, but you cannot stop politicians speaking. So yes, I think the coordination is haphazard. You have seen that government will come with a lot of speed to start projects, and then somewhere down the line, after a year or two, those projects are stopped or are slowed down. There is no payment. We have to have very strict timelines. We have to start projects where money has been set aside, or at least there is a program of how, if you start a road, 3-4 years, then how you fund it. If you start a hospital, but that sometimes you see that we are quick to move on to other projects and then have too many stored projects, and that's government money.
But since it's being embroiled in politics, that should be off the table, because I think during the appointment, the president was very categorical that these CSs, they are apolitical. Right, so they should not be coupling themselves.
Exactly, but you see, they are his appointees, so he should not even be frustrated. It's just a matter of sending them home. I mean, really, some also have messed up the jobs, in terms of
why is it slow off the mark to do that?
I don't want to pretend that I know why, because for me, I think you know, also the presidency is political. Also, it's a political office. Sometimes you form friends, and those are the friends you also appoint. So, and I think so. Therefore, you can see
but
sometimes
given his
it
legacy,
becomes
which is at stake.
His legacy. Let me say something about that. I think it is now time. We have 3 years and 4 months. I think there is no way. And I beg, I'm not being negative, and I really want to be very positive, and we need to project and be able to encourage Kenyans, but we cannot have a legacy of 4 huge agendas, and then we have started talking about referendum. Somewhere we shall disrupt them, but also I would imagine, like, if I look at health, possibly that alone, you cannot even do all of it. It is possible that the president can narrow down to some or 2 or 3 issues that really are hurting Kenyans, like cancer. But then, when we come to industrialization, I think connect that to housing, but don't possibly do housing in cities. Let this housing issue be, maybe a thread that runs up to the grassroots, so that maybe there is a material or a technology that helps everybody.
You struggle also to actually have clarity on this.
Right.
Maybe
No.
not.
Yeah, because it is not clear.
It is not clear, but that's the question, and then we are asking ourselves.
So narrow down to 1 or 2.
Fantastic. Did the president, you know, bite too much that he could chew?
That's what I said. Maybe it is time to evaluate, because 1 year down the line, we need to evaluate and see whether it is possible. I don't think it is possible, because even funding of this is going to be a big challenge.
Dr. Zani, did he bite too much that he could chew?
There are countries that bite more than they
No,
can
you know,
chew, and they are able...
you haven't allowed me finish the last point. And you know, this was
no, you cannot talk all the time. You remember what time you came? No. Let's hear from Zani. Hold on. Let's hear from Zani. We'll come to you. We'll come to you. These are the consequences. Choices have consequences of coming late.
That is true. Trying to squeeze everything. I told you where I was coming from.
We'll come to you. Let's hear from Zani. Dr. Zani.
I think Honorable Hobe will get a chance to expand on that again. But Debarl, I wanted to say that, you know, I mean, we're talking about 50 years after independence. Really, for me, it is systems. When you put systems into place, you can run anything anyhowly. Because once you have systems into place, you don't have to go check on the A to Z processes of those systems. How are they working? I think that has been our major unfailing. BBI is trying to do that from the 9-point agenda. Again, you know, you want to address a holistic thing, because when you're looking especially at even the ethos, you see, it comes back again to the people. There you are, you have an agenda. The people who are involved in that agenda, Debarl, if you look at, I'm looking at, this is the People Daily, on page 6, you know, the digital tax, sorry to take us there, but the 47 M-Pesa lines, you know. So already if we have a culture where anybody who gets a chance is actually thinking about taking something for themselves, it makes it very, very difficult to implement anything without transparent systems and without having this national lack of a national ethos. This is point number 2 of the BBI agenda, trying to address a national ethos, trying to get people who want it to happen. Because you can't do this yourselves. You're relying on other people. You're relying on a team to do it. You're relying on some of the CSs who are being relied on to do it. These CSs might actually still not be in the cycle of the ethos, or they might be, but the people who actually are under them, you can't supervise everything 100%, 48 hours checking. But if you have a group of Kenyans, and Debarl in the Rostorian developmental theory of development, countries begin to take off. They begin to have the developmental takeoff when a new group of people come into the fore who are patriotic, who are driven by the dream that the country can take off. That changes the ball game completely. So you're thinking about the economic aspect, but you also have to think about the personnel aspect and the sort of people that you're creating. A national ethos is important. America managed to change quite a number of things. They still have problems. But when they came up with the American dream, and the ethos of being America and defending America, and everybody bought into that, it changes everything. Changes even the way the child in school decides they may not copy, because this is not something, you know, Kenya is proud to have. So looking through again all the BBI points, you know, that dealing with divisive elections, part of it might be the issue of a referendum, safety and security, corruption, shared prosperity, responsibilities and rights, for example, ethnic antagonism, all these form a package. But for me, the biggest package is the system. A way to put a system into place would enable all this to happen. I've seen some of the blogs asking so many houses within such and such a time. China, look at the China takeoff. How did they manage? They just went into an overdrive and met the implementation. So you need to have those sort of people. You need to have the economy into place, but you also need now to have that catapult. And again,
they had timelines. They had a plan.
They have a plan.
Yeah, we are not told what the plan is so far. We've not seen how the rollout will they begin also the groundbreaking.
This is the important part. This is the important part. That plan has to be there. That plan has to be shared for people to actually be able to carry that plan. That has to be shared, but also in developmental theorizing, which is very important. You've got to have mass consumption. You have to get, mass accumulation before mass consumption. We're at mass consumption here and there, without the accumulation. Once you accumulate, then the distribution, the consumption becomes easier. So yeah.
So when you talk about mass accumulation, what are we talking about?
Mass accumulation, you're talking about, for example, in a developmental, what you put in is what is going to be shared later on. So there is no country, for example, that is going to be able to share its resources properly when whatever was to be put in those resources
so the question is,
to build the infrastructure.
What are we putting in? I asked previously, what are we putting in if we can't even pay our elderly, you know, the monthly stipend so far?
So
is the government broke? That is a question. Even so, for this accumulation you're talking about, will it really happen in the first place?
Debarl, for me, the answer is performance management. You remember once in a while back, we had the scorecards, we had the performance contracting and so on.
We have the efficiency delivery unit.
You wonder where it disappeared. Because when we say a CS is performing or not performing, on what basis are we judging him or her? Is it just because he's every day on the media, or how do we judge who is performing and who is not performing?
Matiang'i is a benchmark.
So, yeah,
but Matiang'i is a benchmark, maybe.
Yeah, so what's the basis? So I really honestly don't know. In monitoring and evaluation, one would require to have, and in project management, one would require to have very clear key performance indicators so that we know by which time what will have been delivered, how much was delivered, how much was not delivered, and why, what do we need to improve. I think if the executive helped us to focus on that, and it goes back to the point that you are raising of prioritizing and planning. If we have the 9 points, okay, we know we have said we want to have 500,000 units by a certain time. But then how can we break it down? By when? By who? How are we going to finance it? Where is the money coming from? The private sector, the public sector, and so on and so forth. So that, you know, it's like, we move together as a country behind that. But there must be clear plans. Maybe finally in this regard, I must also make a passionate appeal to the media. Instead of sometimes giving us the headlines that divert us, could we focus on, and the focus, nation has been focusing on fighting graft, that's very good, but that should not be the only thing. This Big Four agenda, can we help the country to move towards them? If we take industrialization, what is it that we're going to push in that? And in this regard, very often we forget the technology. We talk about IT itself is an industry. What are we doing about that to create jobs? So that at least for the next 24 months, we run knowing very well these are the deliverables that we want, and so is working on them. And we expect results at the end of the day.
Right. And of course, we had the efficiency delivery unit. Yeah, in the Kibaki regime.
Sure.
And this was actually putting, you know, everyone on their toes as far as delivery is concerned. That was quashed. We had the performance contracting you're talking about.
Right.
That we don't hear much of it nowadays.
Sure.
And again, you put up a very good also point on the KPI as well, the key performance indicators as far as this is concerned. We need to know what is the plan in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't know what, Mazo, you will say on this as far as they need to roll out a plan, at least even maybe put it out on the dailies and tell us this is the timelines.
Correct.
Okay, with the Big Four agenda, we're beginning with the housing. By this particular year, we should have had this particular units. And this is a piloting phase. Up to now, at least even we can know and keep track. We know at least we are on traction as far as this is concerned. But as all of us are concerned in this particular studio today, this is just a cheap talk about the Big Four agenda. Where is the concrete plan?
The biggest problem of housing was how it was going to be financed, and some ideas were floated, and you know, even everybody was to be taxed more, and, you know, so that we could have the housing program. But the main roadmap was never revealed. Who was going to do what? In fact, I brought up an issue in Parliament on the 11th Parliament about a lot of government housing projects which have stalled, and I thought they should first complete that, and then know that in this housing program, what are we targeting? Are we doing housing for individuals? Who are we housing? What has happened in other places where there was a program like of that nature? For example, we were trying to do away with the slums, and it became a very complicated issue, because you will give people houses, they will rent them out and still create another slum somewhere. So we need to have a roadmap so that we will not house people who may not be ready to be housed, when we use public resources to develop people, we must make sure there are other structures which will make sure that they are not going, you know, that we are going to achieve what we want to achieve. In India, one time, they tried to do away with the slums, and what happened here in Kenya actually also had happened in India. You move people and you find they have not moved. So we must have a roadmap, and we must have a timelines, and we must see the achievements so far. Right. It's 1 year now. Where are the houses? Which houses? Where? And are we spreading them across the country? Are we taking care of the counties? What's happening in Mombasa? What's the planning? Because one of the biggest disasters is the planning of our towns, our cities, so that we know what plan, the master plan, we are going to execute, and who are the beneficiaries. I think it must come out in advance, and most important, they must really complete the government housing projects which were started 25 years ago and have never been completed to date. They must first complete that. It's a huge housing project in water for government servants. It must be completed, and many others which are stalled across the country.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the question will have been again, do we need a delivery dream team on this, that the president should have appointed maybe a secretariat to actually oversee this? I know we have so many of them, the BBI and all, or we can convert this so that at least we know this is a particular team to put them actually, or to hold them accountable as far as the delivery is concerned. And the question is, again, what is the purpose of presidential delivery unit? Alice?
Yeah, okay. I think from the idea that he has actually tasked one minister, although that will obviously might run into problems. And you saw the frustration over the weekend by the president. Like some ministers are starting to wonder how they report to another minister. Yes. Yeah, and of course, although the minister himself has the government coordination is within the interior ministry, you see, that has never been utilized, you see. So it's kind of like a change in terms of the way the government is set up. But if you look at it critically, it is possible that that was the intention of government coordination. However, when you then come back to the constitution, you'll find that the president has been given a certain number of ministers, and they are supposed to report, because they may report to Matiang'i, but also still have to report directly to the president. So there could be duplication. And I think that the delivery unit then can be created from that idea. I think it's a noble idea to coordinate so that the weaknesses, the gaps can always be discussed at that unit. So I think this idea of the president where one minister was supposed to then be receiving reports, where are we? Timelines, planning can now then be developed further to that unit that then can be able to speak even to the country. So that we are saying this is where we are on the agenda for, or the big four, and also even advise the president that, look, possibly we now need to narrow down this. And beginning with us having the culture of, can we understand? So that I think the doubting is more than they believe that it will happen. You see, and this is because even planning for 11,000 houses per month can actually take maybe could itself in terms of planning and finding out where the resources will be, what technology we shall use. That cannot be a year's work. I mean, look, government projects are planned for years.
Right.
And I think that if the president could succeed in maybe some issues about this big four, then the legacy cannot be said to be lost, because you cannot achieve a legacy in a day or in 2-3 months. I think it is something that then the country, you know, we keep on saying India, we keep on saying Asia, Malaysia, is because there is something that those countries picked and then worked on. Maybe they said we will tolerate no corruption at all. And then that becomes the permeating and the influencing factor and becomes the legacy. So I think if the president were to succeed, and I think it is possible that the corruption case, it's something that can actually be the main legacy of this presidency. So that if we can be able to clear with that one, because you cannot be planning to build houses, and then when you look at the headlines, then you see Power Farm caught in 14 billion.
In fact, I was looking at the headlines. Yes, we can go together. Yes. Power Lands, this is the Daily Nation. Power Farms caught in 14 billion shillings land scam. Then you come to Standard again. You have car importers' new shocking trick. Of course, this is still corruption. Yes. Then you come to also, I think the only one which was different was the Star today. But you come here again to People Daily. Mystery of missing golden chains. And of course, you remember these chains in the city halls.
Yeah, in city hall. Yeah.
Where are they? Right? And you come now to the Star. How I survived the Embu fight, this is just diametrically different. But of course, it feeds to what is happening within counties and the corruption as well. And also, when you look at the Business Daily, these are the headlines as we wake up to, right? We have Kenol CEO deleted text before insider trading raid. This is all about corporate governance and corruption as well within corporate governance. I mean, it is frustrating every day. If you maybe, as you say, you can pick one particular pillar, which is corruption, and say, this will be my legacy.
This will be my legacy, so that the country will always remember that there was a time where we were on our knees because of stealing and theft. And then, therefore, even as the country is planning for these other big four, because these are things I think are good.
Thank you.
And we would achieve possibly going forward in future. But there is no way we are going to achieve if every day when we wake up, then the list...
Those are the headlines.
The list of the headlines continues to pile up of loss of public money.
So where do we... Because in all this talk that we're having about BBI and the talks we're having about Big Four agenda, where is the Vision 2030 feeding into this? We have the economic, the social, and the political pillars. It is lost somewhere. Yet this is a secretariat that actually is drawing from the exchequer, right? Yet over the years, we've never been given, over the intervening years, we've never been given actually a feedback on what they do. These actually are the points, and we're yet to reach there. So the question I always ask, are we waiting for that particular day that we wake up, boom, and we've arrived? This is Vision 2030. I mean, where is the roadmap to Vision 2030? Will it just be a eureka moment for Kenyans to wake up and find all new buildings? We are actually in a utopian land.
I think the situation is even more dim than that, Debarl. You saying that 2030 will come and we see these things, but remember all the other goals that we've made, SDG goals, even universal goals, up to 2020. Look at what happens when that year arrives. Nobody goes. In fact, when people meet, they now say these are the new goals. Without evaluating, why did we set these goals if we're not going to attain them?
If we look at the MDGs and SDGs right now, at least with the MDGs, we had, intervening years and being told this is before we actually reach 2020, this is where we've reached, or 2015, this is where we've reached so far. I mean, this is what we've achieved. There were key performance indicators along the way. Vision 2030? Have you ever had a press conference and saying Kenyans, this is where we are?
The point I'm trying to make, Debarl, is more that even when that time comes, that no explanation is given at all. With the MDGs, yes, the goal is not achieved, but there has been evaluation as time goes on. They will say, for example, transition rates, we need to get 100%. Look at what has happened, for example, in education, 100% transition rates. TSC is saying that 50%, they can only give, they can only have staffing for just about 50%. So just how we catapult about how we want to go about development. There's no one panacea, but clearly, we must, you know, be very cognizant that all these, you know, we can have the performance contracting, we can have efficiency delivery units, we can have key performance indicators, KPIs, we can have a presidential delivery unit. But when you have people, like for example in standard, now page 11, why doctors order unnecessary tests. The doctors are ordering, and all the others that you said, are ordering unnecessary tests on insurance cards because they can actually get paid faster than they would be in private clinics. Now again, creates a problem. So clearly, some sort of evaluation and monitoring is necessary, like in anything else. There is no country, for example, that is unique in terms of security, but you find certain countries will go an extreme mile. They'll see, for example, the CCTVs are working. And even now, we're making progress even in Kenya. Look at the case we're talking about our lady we're talking about, Mildred. You know, the CCTV at least has, you know, before we'd be told even the CCTV was not working. Now that is working, and now we can at least move. But it's a question of moving all together, moving very systematically, but there must be some sort of change that happens. And if that is inhumane, you know, because it was Pluto said human beings are brute, so some sort of system for control. If you know you're going to take that coin and somebody will follow you through and something will happen, very few people will proceed with that. If you actually sell this agenda and make sure this is the agenda, and somebody somewhere must have the bigger macro picture and divide it into smaller units for all the other people. These are the houses, this is how we're going to do them, this is how much you're going to put, so that the whole thing is moving as a system. We are able to do that slowly, you know, over time. Cumulative, if you look at some of the projects, they have been successful. But again, the pace, and there's still something happening in there. And I think we're zeroing into that bit about the coordination and the, you know, the economy.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked of the Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat or Delivery Unit. Because when you are asking, do we create new organs or institutions? If you ask me, I'll say we don't need to, because there's already that unit with very eminent and able Kenyans. I think the chair of Vision 2030, James Mwangi, Equity Group CEO, very capable. The PS of planning, Dr. Julius Mwea, very capable and very committed and passionate about moving the country forward. I think it's just a question of empowering those organs and doing their thing. And I want to encourage the executive, just like we had, there was the recent Boma's conference stroke summit on anti-graft. We also need a similar in terms of particularly the economy. Maybe the state with the multi-sectoral groupings have a conversation, how do we improve the economy? And for me, I would even break it down further to the big four. Can we have a conversation with professionals? There's now what we call knowledge cities, knowledge economy, and knowledge management, and so on and so forth. And Kenya is not short of skills and knowledge and professionalism and professionals. Can we take advantage of them to move the country forward? If it's universal health coverage, could we have a national conversation around that? And because up to the stage where we have a national conference, whether it's at BOMAS or KICC, but we need that coming from a bottoms up, from the grassroots. And this is doable. And for me, this would be a very more productive way to use our airtime. I do know from the media perspective, you may say, okay, that may not sell. Because what may sell are the stories we see in the papers. But I think a balance of both would be vital. So that if we say this month we are focusing on affordable housing, can we have a true conversation where the experts, when it's a question of financing, because as Mheshimiwa Manzo was saying, maybe who is going to finance? There are many investors who want to come in, foreign. We know, for example, there are European investors who want to come into Africa, and Kenya being one of the places that's attractive. You know, instead of where you get 2, 3, 4% interest per annum, why not come to a place where you can get 2 digits? There are also major business people in Southern Africa who, because of the Malema effect, want to move out elsewhere in Africa, and Kenya and Nigeria are attractive. So there's a lot we could attract in terms of investments. If the diasporas, they bring into this country now more than what we get from tea, horticulture, tourism, and all this. They would, if the environment was right and we create incentives, we wouldn't lack resources to invest in the big.
Thank you. Dan Mazu.
Yes, you know, Vision 2030 had flagship projects. And one of the things the president wanted to implement was irrigation, so that food security And he was targeting 1 million acres and really was very passionate about it. Went to Israel, launched Gulalu irrigation scheme, and challenged the Minister of Agriculture not to follow him to Nairobi as soon as he leaves that site. And we have seen one of the things like Thwake Dam in Makueni and Konza City, you know, which once completed will be able to stimulate some activity, you know, in investments in IT and things like that. I think the whole idea of Vision 2030 is a great idea. The question is, where are we since we started? You know, 2030 is approaching. What will we have achieved by 2030? When are we going to have these flagships moving on? And irrigation is important because, you see, we are buying a lot of foodstuffs into the country. We need to look the whole idea of agriculture. We are even insufficient of eggs and insufficient of fish. Instead of being the ones to supply other countries with these commodities, because, you know, Kenya has very good climate for agriculture. So I thought some treasury is very important for this. And even when international funding is happening, it's going to be budgeted somehow, be it World Bank, be it African Development Bank. It's one of the things Parliament must approve. When we take stock so far, there's some good activity going on, but I think we need to focus more. We need to make sure that the flagship of Vision 2030, for example, supply of clean water reduces diseases by half. So if you have clean water in Nairobi City, yes, in many other parts of the country, you are going to solve many problems in relation to health. You are going to save a lot of money in relation to health because you have clean water, you have clean surface. Cleanliness it reduces, you know, disease, infections and things like that. And as a nation, I think we must also look at it positively. We have achieved a lot as a nation so far, and especially the handshake climate is very good for development. We need now to put it in the constitution or have a system in future so that the country is stable politically, so that it can also grow economically. When there was political instability, we lost a lot as a nation, almost half a year of very little activity going on. We have terrorism to fight. You know, the public must move together so that we have a lot of Kenyans giving information to the police. Kenyans have all this information about terrorism, which is very expensive. You know what happened to produce it. It's very, very expensive economically. The message sent around the world was the wrong one. But Kenyans now, if they volunteer, we should not, all of us own the nation and want to do something good for this nation.
Thank you. And of course, as we're winding up as well, it will be also remiss of me if I don't really ask you about the housekeeping and the Wiper Party, what is really happening so far. All this in the spirit of handshake, there's cascading effects of handshake, maybe, so to speak. What is really happening so far with Kifuda Kibwana and, you know, the chair of the Wiper Party?
Well, I don't think there's anything much happening. The political parties are registered and we are in a coalition called NASA, and now we are at the table of handshake. What happens is that we have to acknowledge leadership, and the leader of Wiper has majority of MCAs in the counties and has majority of MPs from the eastern region, among other parts of the country. And I want to say that if a cup like this, like the one Dr. Shemo is having here, breaks, it doesn't mean now if accidentally breaks, you get so annoyed about such a little incident. You have to move on. You don't need now to break all the other cups and get upset and break everything in the room. So I believe the leadership is firm. And even right now we have a by-election in Nairobi. And we're looking forward to support from our political partners. So I thought what was happening between the chairman and his alleged resignation, you know, when you join a political party and when you are elected in a political party, you sign up serious legal documents, and you have an option. If you really feel things are not going right within the Wiper Party, you resign, and you seek fresh mandate.
Thank
That's
you.
what happens. Once you resign, you seek fresh mandate, that kelele will be gone.
Thank you very much. Let's hear closing remarks from Dr. Zani, 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think just to reiterate, I think today's topic has been mainly on corruption, and to reiterate that BBI point number 7 is on corruption. I think the views we have presented is to deal with corruption. We've talked about all these different ideas, really, and really they are for enhancing a developmental process that should get us somewhere. We're hoping that in the next 10 years we won't be sitting here saying the same things. I think we have all what it takes. It happens when it has happened. You know, a project is not to have happened, and it is finally done when it has been done. And Kenyans have the expertise, they have the knowledge. We need to be able just to zero down to where the weak cracks are, and those are very important. For you to have the macro picture in place, the micros that are very, very important, corruption, coordination, all these things have to be put into place. It's not impossible. Singapore has made its progress, China has made its progress. It's possible for Kenya to get there too.
Right, Dr. Shemuchodo.
Debarl viewer just reminded me it's important we reiterate the point of oversight and strengthen the opposition, maybe creating the formal office of opposition leader with deputies, and maybe empowered with resources to oversight government. But allow me to pay tribute to Kogalo. I think it would be unfair if we don't, that they succeeded and defeated, was it Zamalek, the Egyptian team, and we wish them well. But I'm also happy, Debarl, you steered us clear away from the politics, ODM and wiper fighting in Embakasi. I think it's more important the issues, the key issues that we are raising on the table.
Thank you.
Keep it that way.
Alice Ohome.
Yeah. Debarl, I want to say that even as we think about the Big Four, I want to say that when I listen to, especially where I come from, the Mount Kenya region, the people are still very, very lost in terms of where the coffee industry is going, the sector, where the sugar industry on this other side is going, tea farming, maize farming, dairy farming, and I think even as we move forward, then we need, because Kenya is really agricultural, it's still largely agricultural, and we are going to lose the farmers, we are going to lose the people, and they feed from that, they educate from that, their health relies on that, so that must be part and parcel of the Big Four agenda or Vision 2030, and it seems to have been abandoned because we are seeing importations like Manzo said, you know, eggs, milk, what from outside. Then, but I want to join Shem Ochodo on the issue of the
30 seconds.
The government as my final, the government structure and the opposition and how this handshake is coming out. I think there is something that we are going to regret about, because when I look at the handshake must not, in my view, mean that the opposition ends in government. I would want a situation where we evaluate and strengthen the minority, because the Constitution has government and minority.
Thank you.
It has opposition and government.
Thank you.
Unless we take care of those boundaries, strengthen so that government can be oversighted, I think it will end up as a as a fraud, Debarl as a fraud to Kenyans and a coup to the Constitution.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alice Wahome. And let me just read one or two tweets as we're winding up. We have Beng Charlie saying that these headlines dwarf the Big Four agenda and speaks volumes on governance. President Kenyatta should focus on good governance and the elimination of corruption. Power from court, and of course, this is what is in the dailies today. Of course, looking at across all the dailies, it's all about corruption. Samuel Orutwa, revenue collection in national government and counties depends on rate of investment, both public and private. There is nothing much can be done to boost revenue collection if investments are declining. In simple terms, the economy welfare or the economic welfare of people determines revenue collection. Also, we have this is Rawlings, lastly, saying Uhuru Kenyatta is a frustrated man, realizing late in the day that his term is coming to an end, yet he has almost zero to show for it. The BBA was meant to bring in relative peace in the country to help Uhuru build on his legacy. Let's fix security and economy. Those are your comments. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate that. Also, Lele from Kiplangat is saying, Nakuru tuned. We thank you also for tuning in from Nakuru, Lele Kiplangat. You've been watching This Is a Point here on AM Live, and I want to thank our panelists. This is Alice Wahome, Member of Parliament from Kandara. Also, we had with us Dr. Agnes Zani. She is the nominated Senator and the Secretary General of ODM, Deputy Secretary General. Also, we do have with us Dr. Shem Ochodo, right? He's Chair of Kenya Global Alliance, and Dan Mazo, Member of Parliament from Makueni. Thank you for your valued company. Have a lovely day. Thank you,